resurrected the vengeful, vicious version of his son and began attacking everyone you love. What would you do? Ludlow, Maine has been a ticking time bomb for the last 300 years, ever since the Micmac tribe built a burial area for animals in the woods, hoping it would protect them from the savagery of Stephen King's imagination. Little did they know, there is no escaping that. The town still exists right on the edge of evil, ignoring the things in the woods like it'll just go away on its own, instead of spawning, thinking, scheming zombie versions of anyone who is buried there. If we're going to survive, we'll need to stay away from people we know, aim for the eyes, and leave town entirely. I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the ancient evil in Pet Cemetery Bloodlines. The year is 1969, the height of the Vietnam War. A grieving father named Bill drags his son's body into the cursed pet cemetery and buries him with his dog tags. Apparently, little Timmy died with a noose around his neck. Whether self-inflicted or not is anybody's guess. It means the same to Bill, who's barely got him in the ground before Timmy springs back to life, dragging his beloved dog into the ground beside him. Looks like the cemetery's feeling generous today. 2-for-1 special. Across town, Judd and his girlfriend, Norma, are packing away their lives to leave Ludlow for good and join the Peace Corps. Judd's dad, Dan, seems relieved it's happening. Judd isn't thrilled about the move himself, he just wants to be of service. He's a hero without a cause, a dangerous thing in a town adjacent to the mouth of hell. We learn that he had two good friends growing up, Manny, the local kid of a native descent, and Timmy. In town, Judd runs into Bill, who bitterly gloats that Timmy is home with an honorable discharge and a silver star, and implies that Judd is a draft dodger, which he is, unintentionally. We'll learn later that Dan, the postal worker Marjorie, Mayor Benson, Sheriff Anderson, and a couple of others are all part of a secret society in Ludlow that guards the pet cemetery. Not very well, obviously. Bill breezed right on in, but it came with the perk of falsifying Judd's medical record so that he would be ineligible to serve, and it's an open secret among Ludlow's adults. The day after Bill uses the cemetery, Benson warns Marjorie that they'll have to start a city watch because the sheriff found a fresh grave there this morning. This right here is more than a little concerning for a number of reasons that we'll go into later. Suffice to say, this is bad news for Judd and Norma's great escape. At the Ludlow town border, a raven destroys their windshield, and they get out of the car to find Timmy's dog, Hendrix, looking rough. I mean, real rough. Judd and Norma decide to escort it back to Bill's farm. Yeah, nah, I've read Cujo. This dog ain't right, and it's time to drive around and shoot the sheriff a friendly message about the dog possibly having rabies. Testing. Can you hear me through those headphones you're wearing? Well, upgrade your listening game with this video sponsor, Raycon. In today's world, technology perfect their guys and health like a dream every day. Into Raycon everywhere. Timmy taunts and Judd, saying he would have died the first day of the war, and he's lucky his father paid to keep him out. But sounds like he's either responding to or parroting something talking in his head. Judd tries to make excuses to leave, but Hendrix suddenly attacks.
I got your dog!
Dog bites aren't just deadly in the bloodletting sense, or because they might cause rabies, which has been 100% fatal in all but 29 cases worldwide. Dog mouths are filthy with dangerous bacteria that cause sepsis and transfer tetanus, noroviruses, and salmonella. If a bite breaks the skin, wrap a clean cloth around their wound and apply consistent pressure to stop the bleeding, while either calling 911 for help or driving them to a hospital. Nearly a third of dog bite victims who are hospitalized require some form form of surgery, and nearly 10% sustain long-term nerve or tendon damage. And obviously, once your best childhood friend just stands there and watches his dog attack your girlfriend, you stay as far away as possible. That is a man who's dealing with some Today, we'd be staging an intervention. Back in 1969, we're leaving the guy with the PTSD demon alone. Instead, Judd returns to confront Timmy and finds him elbow deep in a carcass, whispering that he needs to kill them all. Timmy disappears as Bill approaches and puts the fear of God into Judd. Judd returns home and tells his parents about Norma's attack. He'll say they'll have to stay a few days for her to recover before leaving. His parents exchange a secretive glance before Judd probes his dad for answers. But Dan won't tell him anything, only saying that he's protecting him and wants him to leave ASAP. Or, how about you call the doctor you paid to keep your son out of the war and tell him to transfer Norma to a hospital in another town? Judd would definitely follow. Meanwhile, Tim makes a kill list of every important character in this story, which I'd make fun of if I hadn't read most of Stephen King's novels. This list is what the evil in the cemetery does to people. Corrupts your memories, preys on your closest relationships, and turns your vengeance against those you know. Timmy pulls off his deteriorating flesh and uses his blood to mark the page. Then, he heads over to Marjorie's house with Hendrix to freak her out by quoting her father's unalive note at her before disappearing. As a general life rule, if you come home to an erratic, unexpected visitor who makes you uncomfortable, you either leave immediately or shoot them. Break your routine so you're harder to track down, especially if you have a secret society of Ludlow Knights to turn to. She calls Mayor Benson, but the dialogue is all over the place here in terms of clarity. He says Timmy couldn't know what the unalive note says, but also admits that people who come back from the cemetery like to use dark secret details to get into people's heads. Meanwhile, Marjorie's over here with the crime web on her wall, which suggests that even if they have personally never dealt with the cemetery problem before, their parents probably did. So, get everyone together, go over to Bill's, double check. Even if you only think Timmy's dog has been resurrected, that's more than enough reason to stop the threat as soon as possible. The glacial pace at which these so-called town guardians are moving is sinful. It's like spending your whole life working in a lighthouse, only to see a ship careening towards the rocks and letting it crash because you don't want to climb a flight of stairs. Just as Marjorie ends the call, Hendrix attacks out of nowhere, which shouldn't have been possible if you left when you should, or taken precautions like someone just showed up with their dog to threaten you. The Ludlow Knights convene in a local diner. Marjorie arrives, sporting a gnarly bite on her face. She tells the others she killed Hendrix, and now they need to kill Timmy. But then they just sit there like refugees in a Waffle House during a hurricane. This story never goes into detail about the training these townies received to take over this pet cemetery vigil from their parents, but you would think they'd know the legends of the cemetery at least. We'll learn later that the earliest colonial accounts of this place mention an insatiable hunger for flesh, which means you could easily lay a trap for these things with a pile of meat and a sniper rifle. Right, now, go. Or are you ordering waffles first? Seriously, this is the only reason your group exists. Meanwhile, Manny comes home to his hippie sister Donna's party, where Timmy appears and cryptically warns Donna that she and Manny won't escape Ludlow alive. Spoiler alert, bro. You think I don't already know that? This town is 10 people away from collapsing completely. Donna tells Manny their grandmother said their people built the pet cemetery long ago to protect them from the forest's ancient evil. She says something is talking through Timmy, and it's a warning that Timmy is dangerous. Okay, so did Graham pass down any other tips? The novel mentions that the native burial ground beyond the pet cemetery attracted a wendigo, which soured the ground and anything buried in it. It's a naturally occurring dark place with no cut and dried answer about how to cleanse or destroy it. But since there aren't a bunch of creatures roving around munching on the living, it's safe to say that things that emerge from it have been destroyed before. And you know better than to mess with monsters you don't know how to defeat, which means you leave Ludlow right now. Pack a bug out bag and prove Timmy's premonition wrong immediately. Drive to the next town and call the Ludlow sheriff about what Timmy said. You can bet your ass If I didn't have a gun or the skills to lay a trap, someone threatened my family, it would be time to bounce. We'll deal with it once we put some space between us and the danger. Will Donna heed our own warning? I'll let you give your best guess. Judd wakes up to something creepy outside his window. He goes out with his gun into the street, nearly gets pancaked by a car, and finds a picture of him, Timmy, and Manny as kids with their faces burned out. Then he turns and finds his dad just sitting on the porch. Dan watched the car almost hit his son and said nothing. But that's not even the worst part. He's just sitting there after we've already seen his group convene about the Timmy problem. You do not have time to lounge. Judd and Manny head to the church where the town's oldest records are kept, but Manny never mentions Timmy's odd party behavior, and he never thinks to bring Donna along despite the present danger, which leaves her completely exposed when Timmy attacks. Timmy enters Donna's house without her noticing and jump scares her. She crawls away, trying to reason with him, trying to humanize herself, but he appears out of nowhere and stabs her. He pulls out the knife and cuts his arm, then bolts. But without car keys, she can only run blindly into the fields. He captures her and drags her away. We don't want to believe the worst of people we've known our entire lives, so we ignore our own instincts screaming out for us to listen to them. When he stabs her, he tells her Timmy isn't here anymore, which is our cue to slam that knife into his eye or neck or ear. At best, he's rationalizing brutal violence. At worst, he's deranged and incoherent. If we can't land a killing blow and we're injured like this, it's time for a barricaded room with a phone. Don't seek out locations with limited vision ranges where attackers can remain hidden until they're literally on top of you. You want to control your environment before it ends up controlling you. At the church, Judd and Manny read old journals about the original settlers who were brutally slaughtered, all save one, Ludlow, the namesake of the town, who tore through his own group and the rescue group and chased the Micmac tribe from the region. Curiously, we learn a single Micmac Indian stayed behind, wearing an animal mask, beating a drum, and going unnoticed or ignored by Ludlow. His only warning to the rescue party was aim for the eyes. Judd finds an entry in the journal that identifies the Ludlow founding families, which includes all of the secret society members. We suddenly cut to Dan sitting on his porch, reading from his dad's journal about the incidents in which dead cannibalistic people terrorized the town. He also says aiming for the eyes is the only way to kill them. Again, I ask, why are you just sitting here? Timmy's over here gorging on raw flesh.
Good.
And dragging Donna's body into a grave in the pet cemetery. Judd confronts his dad, and Dan just walks him right into the pet cemetery and tells him about his secret society of guardians, while Judd's ears ring with evil whispers. Dan says the group of families have been protecting the town for generations from the sickness in the woods, and now it must be stopped from spreading again. Look, I don't want to sound like a broken record here, but why aren't you already over at Bill's house as a group handling this? This is a frustrating part of the movie, honestly. An entire subset of the town's population has intimate details of previous generational successes, but days pass before they do anything about it. And when Dan does decide to confront Bill, he does it alone and unarmed, like a moron made of dream light and rainbows. It's too late for Donna, who arrives at the hospital, bones crunching, mind hazy, voices whispering in her rattled, dead mind, searching for Norma. Norma tries to help her, but only makes a gruesome discovery instead. Donna's skin sloughs right off of her foot. If Ludlow's slowest don't stop the menace in time, decay will. Norma attempts to run, encountering a doctor with his neck broken and getting sprayed with blood as Donna kills the nurse. She runs upstairs, then around to another staircase without closing a single door behind her or trying to lock herself in anywhere. The only door that is locked is the exit. Donna corners her. Norma finally tries locking herself in her room, but can't close the door in time, so Donna quickly overpowers her. Not gonna crap all over this girl's half-assed attempt to escape. This isn't a building she knows, and it seems to be employed by two people, both of whom were just murdered in front of her. Evacuate is the first recommendation of the Department of Homeland Security's active shooter response plan. However, if you are ever in an active assailant situation in an expansive space you're unfamiliar with, hide first and fast. Barricade the door. Straight up stack stuff between the closed door and the far wall so it's physically impossible for the attacker to get in, even if they open the door. Then call 911. Only attack is the last resort, and if you do, take out their most important sense at your first opportunity. Blind them with paint, aerosol spray, hand soap, whatever is in range. Toss a blanket over their face, especially if they're not armed with a gun. Despite no one calling anybody, Judd, Manny, Sheriff Anderson, Benson, Marjorie, Bill, and Dan assemble at Bill's farm to confront Timmy like the worst prepared Avengers. Their plan is, I kid you not, for everyone to go in, grab Norma and Donna since they don't know she's been Wendigoed yet. Before Bill just straight up manhandles his son, they set the house on fire with both of them inside. You do know your son has eyes and ears, don't you, Bill? This hunting party has been standing on the lawn for the last hour. Not only does he know you're here, he's had all that time to plan each of your gruesome deaths. How about we try a carnivore's buffet on the lawn, draw them out, and end them from afar? I'd settle for a goddamn buddy system. Your ancestors are weeping in their graves. Seriously, not only is a buddy system safest here, but you also need it in case one of the first timers can't kill when the situation calls for it. Timmy sets the house on fire as Judd and Manny find Donna's masks in the kitchen. She reveals herself and begins slashing at Manny while he yells at Judd not to shoot her.
Don't you fucking shoot her!
Manny's saved by a double tap from Dan. Oh, wait, no he's not. Because Dan, the one guy who's actually read the literature, didn't shoot her in the eyes. Real dumb reason to die, Dan. Manny remembered at least, and finishes her a second later. Bill arrives to tell them the house is on fire, and drags them down into the basement, which is just so dumb. The door outside is right there, guys. Friendly word of advice. If a building is on fire, don't go deeper into said building. But of course, they have to go down there, because in the 4 days since Timmy's come back from the dead, he's been digging extensive tunnels in between murder people. Busy guy. We cut to some random space where Norma is still alive, restrained and lying on her back in a weird mud hollow. The guys crawl into the tunnels and split up as Timmy follows them in. In the hollow, water begins to seep in. Within a few seconds, Norma's drowning in mud. Try sitting up. Seriously, you're tied at the hands and feet, not to the earth itself. Exercise that core strength before the mud makes it impossible. Timmy digs into a ration of dad before luring Judd and Manny to the exit and dragging Manny away into the forest. Manny sits up, trapped by a landmine tripwire as Judd wastes the last bullets in his revolver chasing Timmy away. Timmy is only lying in wait. Not the greatest idea to fight a man with actual military training if you don't have any. But what do I know? Of course, Judd loses the magical gun with infinite bullets immediately, and Timmy drags him underwater. With only a flare gun remaining, Manny lands the killing blow from afar, and Norma finally sits up, escaping from the mud pit with an extra 4% of effort. In the end, Norma and Judd take up the mantle of being this town's worst protectors, and Manny leaves Ludlow behind. This whole keeping secrets thing is the true villain in a story like this. Timmy is just a puppet of evil, which means the second a group like the Secret Society thinks the dead have risen, it's time to hunt and kill it before it can kill others. Seriously, Marjorie, Benson, Sheriff Anderson, Dan, and Bill might still have died fighting Timmy, but Donna would still be alive, and their chances of survival would have been much higher. By the way, anyone in this podunk town think of paving the whole place over? Maybe turn it into a stinking rotten dump where no one's gonna accidentally wander into it? Just tell everyone the fucking cemetery kills your sex drive, and they'll avoid it forever. For those reasons, I think Pet Sematary Bloodlines was beaten. And remember, unless they can rise as a controllable army to kill your enemies, just let the dead stay dead.